Hey guys, welcome back to Sleeping Stone Whispers. Today, we're slowly stepping into the calm and quiet world of the royal laundry, where every sheet, towel, and robe is washed without urgency, folded with care, and hung to dry in gentle, unhurried rhythm. This is a story for anyone who enjoys letting their mind wander slowly, feeling the day's tension fade away, and slipping into peaceful slumber. So sit back, relax, and give yourself the time to soak in every meticulous, sleepy detail. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more soothing stories that help you drift off effortlessly. The morning arrived gently, without fanfare, over the sprawling royal estate. Sunlight filtered through tall, thin curtains in soft, lazy streaks, painting the walls with a quiet glow. In the servants' quarters, the air was cool, almost still, with only the occasional creak of wooden floorboards breaking the silence. No one hurried. Today, like every other laundry day, was measured by the rhythm of tasks rather than the tick of a clock. In the far wing of the palace, the first stirrings began. A servant shifted under a thin wool blanket, yawning softly, letting the warmth linger just a moment longer before the day demanded action. The scent of damp stone mixed with faint traces of lavender from the night before. It was a day that required attention, patience, and care, qualities that had nothing to do with haste. Slowly, the laundry basin was brought out, polished until its metal surface caught the early light in a dull gleam. Nearby, baskets of unwashed linen sat quietly, stacked neatly, almost as if they too were waiting for the day to begin. Each sheet, each towel, each robe was treated as a delicate piece of the day's rhythm, not a chore to rush through. The sound of water being drawn into the basins was soft, gentle, almost hypnotic. It flowed steadily from the tap, filling the air with a quiet, soothing trickle. A small handful of soap was measured carefully, dropped into the water, and stirred until the foam rose in lazy swirls. The servants watched the suds rise and fall, noting the subtle changes in color and texture, taking their time to ensure every step was done just so. Outside, the first birds of the morning chirped sporadically, their songs neither urgent nor hurried, fitting perfectly into the slow pace of the palace. A gentle breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying with it the faint scent of dew-covered grass and early flowers. Everything moved slowly, deliberately, as if time itself had chosen to pause and observe the careful preparation of the royal laundry. Even as the sun climbed higher, the pace remained unbroken. There was no rush. There was only the quiet, patient start to a day that promised more of the same, sorting, scrubbing, rinsing, and folding. All performed with careful attention and calm precision. And so, another laundry day began, unhurried, peaceful, and complete in its deliberate slowness, setting the tone for the hours to follow. The morning deepened, but the palace remained wrapped in quiet. Outside, the sunlight stretched lazily across the cobblestones, but inside, life moved at its own measured pace. In the servants' quarters, soft murmurs and gentle footsteps began to fill the air. Each movement was careful, deliberate, as if speed would disturb the calm that morning had brought. One by one, the royal servants awoke, stretching slowly in their small beds. Blankets were eased aside with gentle hands, and the chill of the early day lingered for a few precious moments. No one rushed. There was no need to. The palace did not demand urgency on laundry day. The tasks ahead were slow, methodical, and best performed with patience. A faint clatter of bowls in the kitchen signaled the first breakfast preparations, though even this noise was soft and unobtrusive. Servants padded across the wooden floors in socks, their steps careful not to disturb the stillness. Each yawn, each stretch, each quiet sigh seemed to mark time in a way that was both peaceful and predictable. The palace was waking, but it was doing so gradually, like sunlight filtering through clouds on a lazy spring morning. By the wide windows of the laundry room, some servants had already gathered. They moved with soft efficiency, arranging basins, towels, and baskets of linen in precise order. Fingers lingered over the fabrics, brushing away dust or faint creases from the night. Nothing was hurried. Every motion was measured, repeated with a patient rhythm, as if each second of the morning mattered more than the next. Outside, the garden offered its own quiet accompaniment. Birds hopped gently along the hedges, and the faint rustle of leaves in the light breeze added a slow, natural cadence to the palace's rising energy. Inside, servants prepared their tools and arranged their spaces, knowing that the day's work would require steady hands and calm minds. No one spoke loudly. Conversations were quiet, hushed murmurs about which linens required special care or which fabrics had stubborn stains. These were small discussions, slow and careful, allowing the mind to drift from one thought to the next without urgency. Even the smallest tasks were observed with deliberate attention, folding, brushing, soaking, each step a part of the slow unfolding of the morning. And so, the royal servant stirred, fully awake yet unhurried, each movement a gentle prelude to the day ahead. There was no rush, no sudden bursts of energy. Only the soft, steady beginning of a laundry day that would stretch lazily into hours, filled with small, meticulous actions performed in serene quiet. By mid-morning, the palace was quietly alive with small, deliberate movements. The servants, now fully awake, had made their way to the laundry room, where the day's work would unfold slowly, deliberately, and without urgency. The first task, as always, was the water. Filling the basins was not a chore to be rushed, but a ritual that set the pace for the entire day. Water flowed from the taps in gentle streams, clear and cool, landing softly into the waiting basins. The sound it made was quiet but steady, a subtle, calming rhythm that seemed to echo softly through the stone corridors of the palace. Servants stood nearby, watching the rise and fall of the ripples, listening to the soothing cadence as if it were music specially composed for this slow, measured morning. Baskets of laundry waited patiently on the counters. Linens, towels, and delicate silks were arranged carefully, each piece considered for the gentle treatment it would receive. A soft hand ran along the surface of the fabrics, feeling for damp spots, folds, or stubborn creases. Everything was handled slowly, attentively, as if rushing would disturb the quiet order of the room. A soft sigh of satisfaction escaped one of the servants as the last basin filled to the perfect level. The water glimmered in the sunlight streaming through tall windows, catching hints of gold and silver in the reflection. Tiny bubbles floated lazily along the surface, drifting here and there in a slow, predictable dance. The rhythmic sound of water combined with the quiet, meticulous preparation of the laundry to create an atmosphere both serene and hypnotic. Some servants tested the temperature with careful fingers, making small adjustments as needed, letting the water settle before the fabrics would be introduced. Nothing was hurried. Every movement, from the lift of a basin to the gentle stir of the water with a wooden paddle, was deliberate, measured, and slow. It was a morning dedicated entirely to patience, a morning in which the passing of time was marked not by clocks, but by the gentle rise and fall of water. Outside the windows, the palace garden stirred with life, though still in a quiet, lazy rhythm. Birds called softly from the hedges, leaves rustled gently in the morning breeze, and the sunlight slowly crept across the courtyard stones. Inside, the servants' motions mirrored this calm. The water sang its quiet, constant song, setting the tone for the hours ahead, a day of careful washing, folding, and arranging, each task performed in the soothing comfort of unhurried repetition. And so, the gentle sound of water in the basin became the heartbeat of the palace morning, steady, slow, and utterly peaceful, guiding the royal laundry day into its first hours without a single moment of rush or urgency. With the basins filled and the water flowing gently, the servants turned their attention to the linens. Each sheet, towel, and robe was laid out carefully across the long wooden tables in the laundry room. Nothing was hurried, every piece was examined slowly, with soft, deliberate hands. Even the faintest wrinkle or crease was noted and smoothed with patience, ensuring that the fabrics were ready for the careful process that awaited them. The linen smelled faintly of night air, dust, and the subtle fragrance of previous washes. Servants took their time, brushing off small particles and straightening edges. Every fold was aligned perfectly, every hem checked. Some fabrics were lighter, almost delicate to the touch, requiring an extra measure of gentleness. Others were heavier, woven thickly, demanding a different rhythm and technique. And so, the hands moved carefully, almost meditatively, over the textures, letting the mind drift with the slow, repetitive motion. Nearby, baskets of yet-to-be-washed fabrics waited quietly, stacked in soft, uneven piles. The servants worked from one pile to the next, methodically arranging the linens by type, sheets in one stack, towels in another, robes carefully rolled to maintain their shape. The careful sorting itself was a slow and soothing ritual, a way to honor each piece before it touched the water. Occasionally, a servant would pause to smooth a stubborn crease or inspect a faint stain, deciding in slow, thoughtful deliberation which basin or method would best suit the fabric. There was no rush. Each small decision, each subtle adjustment, became part of the slow, hypnotic rhythm of the morning. The sunlight drifted lazily across the tables, highlighting the gentle folds of linen and casting faint shadows that moved slowly as the day progressed. The room was filled with soft sounds. The brushing of fabric, the quiet shuffle of baskets, and the faint hum of conversation between servants, muted and calm. Every motion, every sound, contributed to a steady, tranquil atmosphere, one perfectly suited for a royal laundry day where time seemed to stretch and pause. Even the act of preparing the linens was more than a chore, it was a small meditation, a slow practice in patience and care. Each sheet, each towel, each robe was handled deliberately, ensuring that when the washing began, the process would be orderly, calm, and precise. And so, the linens were prepared, each piece arranged with care, each fold aligned, and each fabric given the attention it deserved. The royal laundry day moved forward, slow and unhurried, its rhythm dictated not by urgency, but by the gentle, deliberate actions of the servants, who moved with quiet focus through the early hours of the morning. With the linens carefully prepared, the next step of the royal laundry day began, sorting. The task was simple in description but required attention, patience, and care. Each piece of fabric was handled slowly, feeling its texture and weight, as the servants separated silks from cottons, heavy linens from lighter cloths. The pace was deliberate, unhurried, as if time itself had slowed to match their movements. Silks were lifted gently, their smooth surfaces gliding through careful fingers. The soft sheen reflected the morning light streaming through the tall windows, highlighting the delicate patterns and subtle colors woven into each piece. They were laid aside in their own neat stacks, folded carefully to prevent any creases, every edge aligned with quiet precision. The sound of fabric brushing against fabric was soft, almost inaudible, yet rhythmic and calming, adding to the hypnotic atmosphere of the room. Cottons, heavier and sturdier, required a different touch. These were handled with a steady hand, lifted one by one, inspected for faint stains or wrinkles, and stacked in their own piles. The folds were straightened, edges matched, and hems smoothed with patient care. Each cotton towel or sheet became part of the slow, meticulous rhythm of the morning. The repetition of lifting, examining, and stacking was steady and measured, a sequence so slow it could easily lull the mind into a quiet, relaxed state. As the servants worked, the sounds of the palace blended softly with their movements. The distant cooing of pigeons in the courtyard, the faint rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, and the occasional soft murmur of conversation all combined to create a serene, almost meditative environment. Even the most mundane act of sorting fabrics became a slow, hypnotic process, a gentle dance of touch, sight, and sound. Occasionally, a servant would pause to admire the shine of a silk scarf or the crispness of a cotton sheet, taking a slow, thoughtful moment before returning to the next piece. Nothing was rushed, nothing was forced. Each motion was deliberate, each decision gentle and careful, reflecting the unhurried rhythm that defined royal laundry days. By the time all the fabrics were sorted, the stacks of silks and cottons stood neatly on the tables, each pile perfectly arranged. The room seemed to breathe with a quiet contentment, the calm rhythm of careful hands and slow motions filling every corner. The royal laundry day continued onward, steady, deliberate, and utterly unhurried, guiding both servants and viewers alike toward a soft, sleepy tranquility. Once the fabrics had been carefully sorted into silks, cottons, and heavier linens, the servants turned their attention to the smaller, yet equally important, task of folding the napkins. It was a process that demanded patience, precision, and, above all, calm. Each napkin, though small, deserved careful handling. No fold was rushed, each crease was formed deliberately and then reinforced with a second, slower fold to ensure it would lie perfectly. The tables were cleared of larger fabrics to make room for the napkins, now laid out in neat rows. The servants moved in unison, hands gliding over the soft material, pressing edges together and aligning corners with slow care. There was a quiet satisfaction in the repetition of the motions: fold, smooth, fold again, stack. The second fold, though seemingly redundant, was never skipped. It allowed for precision, order, and a meditative rhythm that stretched the minutes into a gentle, unhurried flow. The sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated the soft textures of the napkins. Some were fine linen, others cotton, each with its own weight and weave, yet all treated with equal attention. The soft rustle of fabric brushing against fabric was calming, a slow, continuous sound that seemed to mark the passing of time in gentle increments. Servants sometimes paused to inspect a crease or adjust an edge, ensuring the second fold was exact, the alignment perfect. There was no hurry. Only the slow, deliberate pace of careful hands at work. Nearby, baskets of clean napkins waited patiently to be folded, each one receiving the same methodical attention. The quiet hum of conversation between servants blended seamlessly with the soft sounds of folding, creating an atmosphere that was serene and hypnotic. The process, though repetitive, carried a certain satisfaction, with every napkin folded twice, order and symmetry slowly took shape, adding to the calm precision of the room. Even the act of stacking the folded napkins required measured attention. Each pile was straightened and aligned, ensuring that no corner protruded, no edge was uneven. The rhythm of folding and stacking became almost musical in its consistency, a soft, predictable pattern that echoed the quiet heartbeat of the palace morning. By the time the last napkin had been folded twice and stacked neatly, the servants leaned back for a brief, quiet moment of satisfaction. The work was slow, deliberate, and entirely unhurried, creating a sense of calm that filled both the room and the mind. The royal laundry day continued, measured not by urgency, but by the gentle rhythm of patient, meticulous care, guiding both servants and viewers alike into a state of soft, soothing tranquility. With the napkins neatly folded, the attention of the royal laundry shifted toward the next essential step: soap. Not just any soap, but the carefully prepared, subtly scented soap reserved for the palace linens. Retrieving it was a process that required as much attention as folding or sorting, for even the smallest oversight could affect the day's rhythm and the pristine state of the fabrics. A small wooden cabinet near the laundry tables was opened gently, revealing rows of neatly arranged soap bars. Each bar had been made with care, crafted specifically for delicate fabrics, and stored so that its fragrance remained soft, unhurried, and soothing. The servants moved slowly, carefully selecting each bar, noting its texture and weight before placing it on the table for use. The action itself was quiet, deliberate, almost ceremonial in its pace. One servant held a bar of soap, turning it over in his hands and admiring its smooth, pale surface. He ran his thumb lightly across the top, feeling the subtle ridges left by the maker's hands. Another lifted a second bar, testing its firmness and scent, inhaling the faint aroma of lavender and herbs that lingered around it. Nothing was hurried, each movement was intentional, part of a calm, measured sequence that set the tone for the washing to come. Nearby, basins of water reflected the morning light, still calm, still waiting for the fabrics to be introduced. The gentle sound of the water paired with the soft clinking of soap bars as they were arranged on the tables, creating a soothing, rhythmic pattern. Each bar was placed exactly where it belonged, and each placement was checked twice, ensuring that the workflow would remain smooth, uninterrupted, and deliberate. Even as the soap was retrieved, the servants maintained the quiet pace of the morning. Conversations were hushed, soft words about which fabrics required which soap or how much pressure to apply during washing. The air was filled with the subtle sense of soap and water, a gentle olfactory reminder of the slow, careful care that characterized every royal laundry day. By the time the final bar of soap was positioned on the table, ready for the delicate linens, the room hummed with a calm, hypnotic energy. Nothing had been rushed. Every action, from opening the cabinet to placing the soap, had been performed with care, patience, and precision. The royal laundry day continued, its rhythm steady and unhurried, guiding the servants, and anyone observing, into the soft, tranquil flow of a morning devoted entirely to gentle, meticulous work. With the royal soap neatly arranged, the next task began, a slow, careful inspection of every fabric for stains. Each linen, towel, and garment was laid out in front of the servants, who approached their work with patience, mindfulness, and gentle focus. No rush could enter this part of the day. Each mark, no matter how faint, required a deliberate, thoughtful approach. Servants lifted the linens one by one, holding them up to the light streaming through the tall windows. They examined folds, edges, and corners, tracing the fibers with slow fingers, feeling for anything out of place. A tiny smudge or faint discoloration could be easily overlooked, so each inspection was thorough, quiet, and deliberate. There was a rhythm to it, like a gentle pulse, guiding the hands and eyes through the fabrics with steady, unhurried attention. Occasionally, a servant would pause, tilting a sheet or towel in different angles to catch the light just right. Shadows revealed hidden blemishes, subtle streaks, or small specks of dust. These were noted carefully, catalogued silently, and sometimes marked with soft chalk or pinned gently with a needle for treatment later. Every movement was deliberate, slow, and meditative, designed to let the mind drift along with the steady flow of the morning's work. The soft rustle of fabric, the faint scratch of fingers along woven threads, and the occasional, muted whisper of observations all blended into a quiet, hypnotic atmosphere. Servants spoke just enough to communicate, never raising their voices, letting the room's calm maintain its serene energy. The inspection was thorough, but it was never hurried. Every stain was acknowledged with careful thought, as if the fabrics themselves deserved the attention. Even the smallest marks received measured care. A tiny smudge on a napkin was not overlooked, it was treated with the same methodical patience as a stubborn stain on a royal robe. The air was filled with the soft scent of soap and clean linens, mingling with the subtle aroma of the palace itself, a quiet combination that added to the hypnotic rhythm of the work. By the time every piece had been inspected, the linens had been touched, examined, and acknowledged in a slow, unhurried sequence. The royal laundry day moved forward, its pace deliberate, steady, and soothing. Nothing was rushed. Every moment, every careful observation, was part of the gentle, meticulous rhythm that defined the morning, a rhythm designed to calm, relax, and lull both servants and viewers alike into a state of soft, sleepy tranquility. After the long, thoughtful inspection of stains, the servants finally began the task that brought the fabrics fully into contact with the soap and water, scrubbing. But even this action, which could have been loud or hurried, was performed in a calm, measured, and deliberate rhythm. Every stroke of the hands over linen, cotton, and silk was slow, steady, and methodical. A basin of water, now slightly soapy, reflected the morning light, casting soft patterns across the stone floor. The first sheet was lowered carefully, its fibers meeting the warm suds with a soft splash. The servant's hands moved across the fabric in gentle, circular motions, scrubbing just enough to lift the dirt, never too forcefully, never too quickly. The repetitive motion created a quiet, soothing rhythm, soft, continuous, and utterly unhurried. Each garment was treated with individual attention. Silks required delicate, almost reverent care. The fingers glided lightly over the smooth fabric, coaxing out stains without disturbing the natural flow of the weave. Cottons and heavier linens required firmer, steadier pressure, yet even then, the movements remained deliberate, careful, and slow. The room was filled with the soft sounds of scrubbing, water swishing, and soap rubbing gently against fabric, blending into a hypnotic symphony of quiet, repetitive activity. Occasionally, a servant would lift a corner of fabric, inspecting the progress before returning it to the basin for another measured pass. Each motion was deliberate, each decision slow, ensuring that nothing was overlooked and that the fabrics received the precise attention they deserved. The focus on detail, combined with the gentle rhythm of scrubbing, created a sense of calm that stretched across the room, touching everyone present. Even the smallest tasks within scrubbing, the adjustment of the basin, the careful lathering of soap, the soft pressing of hands, were performed slowly, intentionally. There was no rush. The pace of the day dictated the rhythm, and the rhythm dictated the pace. Every sheet, towel, and napkin moved steadily through the water, gaining cleanliness and order with each careful stroke. As the morning progressed, the royal laundry room hummed with quiet efficiency. The repetitive motions, gentle sounds, and steady pace filled the space with a calm, meditative energy. The royal laundry day continued, measured not by clocks or schedules, but by the soft, hypnotic rhythm of hands moving in slow, careful strokes over fabric, guiding servants, and anyone listening, toward the gentle, restful pace of unhurried, sleepy tranquility. By mid-morning, the scrubbing had created gentle ripples across the basins, and the linens were beginning to emerge clean, soft, and ready for the next stages of the royal laundry day. As the fabrics were lifted from the soapy water, a delicate, soothing scent filled the room, the quiet, comforting aroma of freshly washed linen. It was subtle, yet unmistakable, a combination of the soap, the water, and the careful hands that had tended each piece. The servants inhaled lightly, savoring the gentle fragrance, letting it linger for a slow, deliberate moment before continuing their work. The smell was calming, a quiet signal that the meticulous process of cleansing was beginning to yield its reward. Every sheet, towel, and robe carried the same delicate scent, as if the fragrance had been woven into the fibers themselves. The air in the laundry room was filled with it, soft and unhurried, blending with the faint smell of the palace stone and the morning sun filtering through the tall windows. Handling the freshly washed fabrics required equal care. The servants moved slowly, lifting each piece gently from the basin and placing it on the tables or nearby racks. The wet fibers glistened slightly in the light, and the faint, calming scent followed every motion. There was a quiet rhythm in these actions: lift, hold, smooth, adjust, and set aside. Each step was deliberate, a small, hypnotic motion that added to the soft, unhurried flow of the morning. Even as the linens were arranged, the scent seemed to fill the space, wrapping the servants in a calm, almost meditative atmosphere. The gentle fragrance reminded them of the day's purpose, encouraging steady, slow, and attentive movements. There was satisfaction in each piece that had been cleaned, a quiet pleasure in the softness of the fabric and the subtle aroma that drifted from it. Outside the windows, the breeze carried hints of garden flowers, blending softly with the scent of the linens. The combination created a calm, serene environment, one where time seemed to move more slowly, measured not by minutes but by gentle, repeated actions. The royal laundry day continued, its pace dictated by patience and care, each motion and smell guiding the servants, and any observers, toward a quiet, soothing sense of tranquility. And so, the scent of freshly washed linen lingered, gentle and persistent, filling the room with calm, a soft, sleepy signal that the morning had passed into a slow, steady rhythm of clean fabrics, careful hands, and serene attention. With the linens freshly washed and the scent of clean fabrics lingering in the air, the servants allowed themselves a quiet, contemplative pause, watching the bubbles rise in the soapy basins. The small, delicate bubbles formed slowly at the surface of the water, catching the morning light as they drifted upward, wobbling slightly before gently popping or floating away. It was a simple sight, yet it held a calm, mesmerizing quality that filled the room with quiet serenity. Hands rested for a moment, eyes following the soft movement of the bubbles as they moved in no particular rush. Some bubbles merged gently with others, creating larger, slower-moving forms, while smaller ones twinkled and disappeared almost instantly. The rhythmic, unpredictable, yet unhurried motion was hypnotic, drawing attention to the simple pleasures of a slow, methodical morning. The servants moved quietly around the basins, occasionally stirring the water with soft, gentle motions. Each swirl created more tiny bubbles, rising one by one, floating briefly before vanishing. There was no urgency in this process. It was not about speed or efficiency, but about attention to detail, care in motion, and the slow observation of subtle changes in the water and soap. Every movement was deliberate, each bubble watched, acknowledged, and allowed to drift in its natural rhythm. Even the faint sounds of the bubbles, the gentle pop as one burst, the soft trickle as water moved slightly, added to the calm atmosphere. Combined with the muted hum of the servants' quiet steps and soft whispers, the room became a haven of slow, predictable motion. Watching the bubbles rise encouraged a gentle mindfulness, a patience that carried from basin to basin, sheet to sheet. The light filtered lazily across the water, casting soft reflections on the walls, glinting off each tiny bubble as it floated upward. It was mesmerizing, a slow dance that reminded everyone present that the rhythm of the morning need not be hurried. The fabrics waited patiently, the basins held their calm, and the servants moved gently in harmony with the quiet flow of the day. And so, the royal laundry day continued, guided by the soft, hypnotic rise of bubbles, the quiet movements of attentive hands, and the deliberate pace of careful, unhurried work. Each bubble that drifted, shimmered, and eventually disappeared added to the soft, sleepy atmosphere, helping both the servants and anyone listening to drift deeper into calm, unbroken tranquility. Once the bubbles had been admired and the fabrics washed thoroughly, the next step of the royal laundry day began, rinsing. This task, though simple in description, required careful attention and a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each piece of linen, silk, and cotton was moved from the soapy water into fresh basins, where clear, cool water awaited to cleanse it of suds. The servants lifted each fabric carefully, allowing the water to flow over it in gentle, measured motions. Hands guided the linens through the water, pressing softly to remove soap without stretching or disturbing the delicate weave. The movement was steady and predictable: dip, lift, press, release, repeat. Each repetition was slow and soothing, a quiet rhythm that seemed to echo softly throughout the laundry room. The sound of water shifting gently in the basins added to the calm of the room. There was the faint splash of a sheet being lowered, the subtle trickle as it was swirled, and the soft sigh of water being displaced by careful hands. These gentle noises combined into a peaceful cadence, creating an atmosphere that was both hypnotic and serene. The rhythm of gentle rinsing guided the servants' hands and eyes, encouraging patience and mindfulness. Each linen was handled with attention to its unique qualities. Silks required a delicate glide through the water, almost reverent in its motion, while heavier cottons were pressed and swirled with slightly more firmness. Nothing was rushed. Even the tiniest details, adjusting a corner, smoothing a fold, ensuring all soap was removed, were performed with care and measured precision. Outside, the breeze carried a faint hint of garden flowers through the open windows, mingling softly with the scent of soap and clean fabrics. The gentle motion of water and the servants' deliberate actions mirrored the slow rhythm of the morning, creating a continuous, calming loop of sight, sound, and motion. By the time each fabric had been rinsed, the room was filled with a soft, steady energy. The linens were clean, the basins quietly moving with the gentle stir of water, and the servants' movements had become a fluid, meditative sequence. The royal laundry day continued in its unhurried pace, each stroke of hands in water reinforcing the soft, sleepy rhythm, inviting both the workers and anyone listening to sink further into quiet, relaxing tranquility. Once the fabrics had been gently rinsed, the servants turned their attention to the towels, a task that required precision, patience, and slow, deliberate care. Each towel, now soft and clean, was lifted carefully from the water and shaken gently to remove excess moisture. Then, one by one, they were folded with quiet, exacting attention, ensuring that every corner and edge aligned perfectly before being placed in neat, orderly stacks. The room was filled with the soft rustle of fabric as the towels were arranged. Each fold was repeated, double-checked, and smoothed with slow, attentive fingers. Nothing was rushed. Every towel received the same measured care, as though its neat alignment was a symbol of the calm and steady rhythm that defined the morning. The stacks gradually grew taller, yet remained perfectly balanced, a testament to the patient, careful work of the servants. The gentle, repetitive motions of folding and stacking became a rhythm in itself. Hands lifted, folded, smoothed, and replaced each towel, over and over, creating a quiet, hypnotic cadence. Eyes traced the edges, ensuring that nothing was uneven, while the mind wandered slowly, comfortably, as the morning stretched in unhurried steps. There was a subtle satisfaction in this slow precision, a quiet pleasure in bringing order to the soft, clean fabrics. Even the placement of the stacks required thought. The towels were lined up neatly along the shelves, each pile perfectly parallel to the next. The air was filled with a faint, soothing scent of freshly washed cotton, mingling with the soft warmth of sunlight streaming through tall windows. The sight of the rows of towels, identical in size and shape, evoked a sense of calm order that spread through the laundry room, touching the servants and anyone watching with a gentle, relaxing presence. The quiet rhythm of this task, combined with the deliberate pace of each fold and the soft alignment of the stacks, carried a meditative quality. Each towel, handled carefully and placed precisely, reinforced the slow, unhurried tempo of the royal laundry day. Every movement was purposeful yet gentle, contributing to an atmosphere of serene tranquility. By the time the last towel had been folded, smoothed, and lined up neatly, the room radiated quiet satisfaction. The royal laundry day continued onward, steady, slow, and deliberate, guided by the careful hands of servants and the soft, hypnotic rhythm of routine. The ordered rows of towels were a simple, calming sight, a reminder that patience and attention to small details could create a gentle, soothing environment where time itself seemed to pause. With the towels neatly stacked and lined along the shelves, the servants turned their attention to the bed sheets, a task that demanded quiet focus and careful, deliberate movements. Each sheet, large and weighty, was lifted from the drying racks or basins with slow, steady hands, ensuring that no crease or fold would mar its smooth surface. The process was performed in complete silence, broken only by the soft rustle of fabric brushing against fabric. Two servants often worked together on a single sheet, coordinating their movements with gentle precision. One would hold a corner while the other straightened the edges, aligning hems and smoothing out wrinkles. The act of folding a sheet required patience and rhythm. Fold once, smooth, fold twice, adjust the corners, and then gently set it aside in its designated pile. The repetition of these motions created a slow, hypnotic cadence that filled the laundry room with a quiet, calming energy. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows highlighted the soft folds of the freshly washed sheets, casting gentle shadows on the wooden tables below. Each sheet seemed to glisten faintly in the light, as if it were proud of the careful attention lavished upon it. The servants moved slowly, deliberately, their hands gliding over the fabric in measured strokes, lifting, folding, smoothing, and stacking in perfect unison. Even the largest sheets, which might have seemed cumbersome, were handled with patience and care. Every fold was checked twice, each edge aligned precisely, ensuring that the stacks remained neat and orderly. The silence of the room amplified the soft sounds of fabric sliding across the tables and hands brushing lightly against the fibers, creating a gentle, meditative rhythm. As the bed sheets were folded, the servants allowed themselves brief moments to pause and admire their work, taking in the neat, precise rows that grew steadily along the shelves. There was a quiet satisfaction in the process, a slow, comforting pleasure in the methodical repetition that defined the royal laundry day. By the time the last sheet had been folded in silence and placed carefully in its pile, the room radiated calm. The meticulous rhythm of handling fabrics, the soft rustle of linens, and the gentle play of light and shadow all combined to create a serene atmosphere. The royal laundry day moved forward, steady, unhurried, and utterly peaceful, guiding both servants and anyone observing toward a sense of gentle, sleepy tranquility. Outside the tall windows of the laundry room, the sun began its slow, measured journey across the palace courtyard. Its light stretched lazily over the cobblestones, brushing against the trimmed hedges and flower beds in soft, golden streaks. The warmth touched the stone walls of the palace, slipping gently into the laundry room where the servants moved quietly among their tasks. Inside, the rhythm of folding, stacking, and organizing continued steadily. Yet even as the hands busied themselves, their attention often drifted for brief, contemplative moments toward the sunlight. The sun's slow arc reminded them that time moved gently here, without urgency, and that the day's tasks were to be performed with patience and quiet care. Birds flitted across the courtyard, their wings catching the light for a moment before settling among the flowers or the ornate fountain. Their soft chirping was gentle and sporadic, blending into the background as a subtle accompaniment to the quiet sounds of rustling fabric. The sunlight highlighted the folds of the linens, the glimmer of water in the basins, and the soft sheen of the polished wooden tables. Every movement and sound was made more gentle, more deliberate, under the warm, unhurried gaze of the sun. Even the shadows moved slowly, stretching and bending across the courtyard stones, marking the passage of time in a calm, almost hypnotic rhythm. The servants adjusted to these shifts naturally, moving their tasks gently, allowing the sunlight to illuminate their work in a quiet, steady flow. Nothing was rushed, every fold, every stack, every careful placement of fabrics was synchronized with the soft, lazy progress of the day. The palace itself seemed to breathe in tune with the sun, expansive stone walls glowing faintly, courtyards bathed in soft warmth, and the gardens offering a faint, fragrant breeze. Inside, the laundry room was serene, filled with calm, measured activity, and the slow pace of domestic order reflected the lazy, unhurried passage of sunlight outside. By mid-morning, the servants paused briefly to glance toward the windows, noting the light as it shifted gradually across the courtyard. The world beyond the laundry room moved slowly, perfectly in harmony with the quiet rhythm inside. Each ray of sunlight, each soft shadow, each gentle bird call reinforced the calm, hypnotic atmosphere that defined the royal laundry day. And so, the sun moved lazily across the courtyard, marking time with a soft, steady pace. Inside, the servants continued their work, deliberate and patient, following the gentle, sleepy rhythm of the day, guiding both themselves and anyone listening toward a slow, peaceful sense of unhurried tranquility. After the sun had drifted lazily across the courtyard, casting soft light into the laundry room, the servants moved on to the careful task of checking for hidden threads. It was a slow, methodical process, requiring patience and keen attention. Each piece of fabric was laid flat on the wooden tables, hands gliding lightly over the surface, searching for any stray fibers that might have been missed during folding or washing. The process was deliberate. A servant would lift a corner of a sheet or towel and examine it closely, fingers running along the weave to detect tiny threads that had slipped free. Silks demanded particular care, as even a single stray thread could mar their smooth surface. Cotton fabrics were slightly easier to manage, but no less important in this quiet, careful routine. Each thread found was noted and gently removed, sometimes by hand, sometimes with a small, soft brush, always in slow, measured motions. There was a quiet satisfaction in this task. The small, repetitive movements, the lift, the brush, the smooth back into place, created a hypnotic rhythm. The servants worked in silence, occasionally whispering soft observations about which fabrics were especially neat or which required a second pass. The gentle rustle of linens and the soft tap of brushing tools against fabric blended seamlessly with the muted sounds of the palace, creating an atmosphere of calm, deliberate focus. The sunlight continued to drift through the windows, illuminating each fiber and casting long, lazy shadows on the tables below. Every hidden thread discovered and removed became a small victory, a quiet contribution to the order and perfection of the royal laundry. The task, though slow and repetitive, was oddly comforting, a measured, soothing activity that allowed the mind to wander gently as the hands continued their careful work. Even as they worked, the servants moved in harmony with each other, maintaining a consistent pace that matched the soft, hypnotic rhythm of the day. Nothing was rushed. Each action was deliberate, every motion deliberate, slow, and unhurried. The fabrics gradually became perfectly smooth and tidy, ready for the next stage of the royal laundry day. By the time every hidden thread had been found and removed, the room radiated a quiet sense of order and tranquility. The slow, careful work of the servants had created an atmosphere of steady, soothing calm, perfect for continuing the royal laundry day. Every motion, every discovery, and every careful correction reinforced the gentle, sleepy rhythm that guided the palace morning, inviting both servants and anyone listening into a state of quiet, unhurried serenity. After hours of careful washing, folding, and inspecting, the servants allowed themselves a brief, gentle pause. A small tea break to refresh both body and mind. The morning had been long but unhurried, filled with repetitive, calming tasks, and now, in a quiet corner of the laundry room, the warm, familiar ritual of tea offered a moment of soft comfort. A kettle had been set over a low flame earlier, its water now steaming gently. The faint hiss and bubbling were soothing, harmonizing with the distant rustle of linens and the soft creak of wooden floorboards. Cups were brought forward, polished and neatly arranged, and tea leaves measured out with deliberate care. The smell of the tea, warm and subtle, mingled with the lingering scent of freshly washed fabrics, creating a calm, almost meditative atmosphere. The servants poured the hot water slowly over the leaves, letting them steep while the room remained quiet. No one spoke loudly, conversation was minimal, soft murmurs about which linens were especially smooth or which tasks remained for later. Every movement was gentle, measured, and deliberate. Lifting cups, stirring slowly, setting them down with care. The tea break became another rhythm within the day, slow and comforting, perfectly in sync with the peaceful pace of the royal laundry morning. Sitting quietly, they held their cups, inhaling the steam and taking small, careful sips. The warmth traveled from the hands to the chest, spreading a soft, pleasant calm. Outside, sunlight continued to drift lazily across the courtyard, and the soft sounds of birds and leaves accompanied the gentle pause. It was a quiet, restorative moment, a chance to breathe and reset, all within the unhurried tempo that defined the day. Even after the first sip, the pause remained deliberate. The kettle occasionally hissed again, sending small waves of steam into the room, and the servants watched the faint curl of vapor with a gentle attentiveness, allowing their minds to drift softly, soothed by the rhythm of small, mundane observations. Cups were refilled slowly, sugar and cream added with care, but never rushed. By the time the tea break ended, the servants returned to their tasks with renewed patience. Linen and towels awaited further attention, but the gentle pause had reinforced the calm, deliberate rhythm of the day. The royal laundry continued onward, measured and unhurried, each task flowing seamlessly into the next, guiding both workers and listeners into a soft, sleepy state of tranquil relaxation. After the brief, calming tea break, the servants returned to the royal laundry with quiet determination, focusing on a task that demanded slow, deliberate attention, checking for stubborn spots that might have been missed earlier. Even the cleanest linen sometimes held faint traces of dirt or shadow, and the careful eyes of the servants ensured that nothing escaped notice. Each fabric was spread carefully across the long wooden tables, hands gliding lightly over its surface. Fingers traced the weave, searching for imperfections, small discolorations, or subtle blemishes. Silks required the most delicate touch, as even the faintest mark could stand out against their smooth, lustrous surfaces. Cotton linens were slightly sturdier but still treated with patience and care, each movement purposeful, slow, and precise. The rhythm of this inspection was soothing. Lift, smooth, observe, adjust, and repeat. The hands moved in quiet synchrony with the mind, guiding the eyes gently across every fold and hem. Servants whispered softly to each other about the faintest of spots, sharing advice on treatment, yet even these murmurs were hushed, blending seamlessly into the calm ambience of the room. Light streamed lazily through the tall windows, illuminating faint imperfections and revealing small shadows that might have been overlooked in dimmer light. The servants adjusted the fabrics slightly, turning them in the sunlight, giving time and space for a thorough, measured examination. Nothing was rushed. Every spot found was acknowledged and treated with care, whether with gentle brushing, a soft dab of soap, or a careful re-rinse. The quiet, repetitive actions created a hypnotic atmosphere. The soft rustle of linen, the faint swish of hands, and the occasional, subtle sound of soap and water combined into a serene rhythm. Each stubborn spot discovered and addressed was a small, satisfying accomplishment, reinforcing the unhurried pace of the royal laundry day. Even as the servants worked, their minds could wander gently, following the slow, natural rhythm of observation and correction. The day moved at its own pace, guided by patience, precision, and the comforting repetition of simple, careful motions. The laundry room remained a sanctuary of calm, each soft touch, each slow fold, and each delicate inspection contributing to a quiet, meditative sense of order. By the time every fabric had been thoroughly checked, the linens were impeccable, the stubborn spots addressed with meticulous care. The royal laundry continued its deliberate, unhurried course, a series of quiet, soothing actions that invited both the servants and anyone listening to drift further into calm, peaceful, sleepy tranquility. After thoroughly inspecting the linens for stubborn spots, the servants moved back to their work with a calm, measured pace. Amid the gentle rustle of fabric and the soft splashing of water, a quiet conversation unfolded, slow, deliberate, and gentle, much like the day itself. It was not a hurried discussion, nor a debate of urgency, but a serene exchange about fabrics, their textures, qualities, and the subtle differences that made each one unique. One servant held up a silk scarf, letting the morning light filter through its delicate threads. "See how this one glides," she murmured softly, her fingers tracing the smooth surface. "It almost floats in your hand." The other nodded slowly, turning a soft cotton towel in his hands. "And this cotton," he replied gently, "holds its shape well, even after many washes. The weave is firm, but soft enough to be comforting." Their words were few, measured, and deliberate, carrying a quiet appreciation for the fabrics themselves. Every observation was noted with care, every comment made slowly, as if savoring the subtle distinctions that might otherwise go unnoticed in the rush of a busier day. Even the smallest detail, a tiny fold, a slight shimmer in the silk, a faint shadow along a cotton hem, was acknowledged with gentle, focused attention. As they continued their work, the soft sounds of conversation blended seamlessly with the rhythmic motions of laundry. The gentle swish of fabric in the basins, the quiet sliding of linens across tables, and the occasional soft clink of soap against wood became a calming backdrop to the discussion. Every word, every gesture, reinforced the slow, deliberate pace of the morning, creating a serene, hypnotic rhythm. Outside, sunlight shifted lazily across the palace courtyard, its warmth spilling into the laundry room. The servants paused briefly to watch the glow, noting how it illuminated the subtle textures of the fabrics. Even these quiet moments were filled with observation and gentle conversation, connecting the hands, eyes, and minds of the workers to the calm, unhurried rhythm of the royal laundry day. By the end of this quiet discussion, the linens had been handled, observed, and appreciated in the same slow, thoughtful way that defined every task of the morning. The room seemed to breathe in sync with the gentle flow of work, each servant attuned to the subtle movements and quiet sounds around them. The royal laundry continued steadily, unhurried, and meticulous, guiding both the workers and anyone listening into a soft, sleepy, serene tranquility that could last for hours. After inspecting fabrics and engaging in quiet conversations about their textures, the servants began the slow, deliberate process of hanging the clothes to dry. It was a task that could easily be rushed, but in the royal laundry, every action was measured, every motion gentle and unhurried. Each piece of linen, towel, and garment was lifted carefully, stretched slightly to remove lingering wrinkles, and draped across the long wooden racks or polished clotheslines. The hands moved with rhythm and precision. One corner of a sheet was held lightly while the other was guided over a rack, smoothing it with slow, deliberate strokes. Napkins and smaller fabrics were hung in neat rows, spaced evenly, the folds aligned so that gravity could assist in creating a soft, natural crease. Even the largest towels were handled patiently, lifted, adjusted, and draped with care to prevent them from slipping or wrinkling. The sound of the fabrics brushing against the wood or the slight swish as they settled into place was soft and soothing. Each gentle movement added to the quiet, hypnotic rhythm of the laundry room. The servants' motions were deliberate and repeated, creating a calming, predictable pattern: lift, smooth, drape, adjust, step back, repeat. Nothing was hurried, the pace of the day was dictated by patience and careful attention. Sunlight streamed lazily through the tall windows, highlighting each fabric as it hung. Silks shimmered slightly, catching the light in soft, fluid motions. Cotton linens and towels draped evenly, shadows stretching and shifting across their surfaces as the sun moved slowly across the courtyard. The combination of warm light, soft textures, and gentle motions created a serene, meditative atmosphere, where the tedium of hanging clothes became oddly comforting. Occasionally, a servant would pause to straighten an edge, adjust the spacing, or ensure a fold remained smooth. These tiny corrections were performed slowly and intentionally, reinforcing the unhurried, meticulous rhythm that defined royal laundry days. Each task, no matter how small or repetitive, contributed to the overall sense of calm and order in the room. By the time all the linens were carefully hung, the laundry room hummed with quiet, steady energy. The fabric swayed gently in the soft draft, the sunlight glinting across their surfaces. With the linens and towels carefully draped across the racks, the servants turned their attention to the subtle but essential task of alignment. Every garment, napkin, and sheet needed to be perfectly symmetrical, edges even, folds straight, and spacing consistent. The process was slow, deliberate, and meticulous, requiring both patience and a quiet focus that filled the room with a meditative atmosphere. Hands moved gently along each piece of fabric, smoothing out creases and adjusting corners. One servant lifted a sheet slightly, checking that it hung evenly from one end to the other, before letting it settle back onto the rack. Another adjusted a row of napkins, ensuring that each was equidistant from its neighbor. The soft rustle of fabric sliding across wood or brushing against other linens became a soothing, repetitive soundtrack, each sound marking the calm rhythm of the morning. Symmetry was more than a matter of appearances. In the royal laundry, it was a practice of care and mindfulness. The servants treated each alignment as a small, meditative exercise, moving slowly and deliberately, observing the subtle movements of the fabrics and gently correcting anything that seemed slightly off balance. The repetition of motion, lift, adjust, smooth, release, was hypnotic, a steady sequence that filled the room with quiet order. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows accentuated the precision of the work. Shadows fell softly along straightened edges, highlighting each careful fold and perfectly aligned corner. Silks glimmered faintly as they caught the light, and cottons reflected a soft matte glow. Even small imperfections became opportunities for gentle correction, and the servants moved calmly from one fabric to another, maintaining the unhurried tempo of the day. Sometimes, a servant would pause to inspect the racks from a distance, ensuring the symmetry remained consistent across the room. These slow, deliberate steps reinforced the peaceful rhythm, blending observation with motion in a continuous, soothing pattern. Every adjustment, no matter how tiny, contributed to the overall sense of calm and meticulous order that defined the royal laundry. By the time each garment was aligned symmetrically, the room radiated quiet satisfaction. The fabrics hung in perfect order, the light accentuated their gentle textures, and the servants moved with steady, deliberate grace. The royal laundry day continued, measured and unhurried, each precise action guiding both workers and anyone observing into a state of soft, sleepy tranquility, where even the simplest task, aligning every garment symmetrically, became a meditative ritual. Once every garment had been aligned symmetrically, the servants allowed themselves a moment to simply observe the gentle movements of the fabrics in the soft morning breeze. The windows of the laundry room were slightly ajar, and the faint draft caused the freshly hung linens and towels to flap slowly, rhythmically, as if the fabrics themselves were breathing. The motion was unhurried and deliberate, soft edges lifting and falling, folding gently over themselves and then smoothing out again. Silks shimmered faintly as they caught the light, flowing delicately in the current. Heavier cottons and linens swayed in measured movements, responding patiently to the touch of the breeze. Each flap was quiet, subtle, and hypnotic, blending seamlessly with the soft rustle of fabric and the faint sounds of the palace beyond. The servants moved among the racks slowly, adjusting corners, checking folds, but often pausing to simply watch. There was a quiet beauty in the repetition. The same fabrics rising and falling in an endless, calming cycle. Each flap seemed to follow the rhythm of the room itself, steady, predictable, and entirely unhurried. The gentle breeze became an invisible partner in the day's work, guiding motion without forcing it, reminding the hands and eyes of the importance of patience and observation. Outside, the courtyard basked in the soft sunlight, and the shadows of swaying plants fell across the stone floor. The motion of the linens mirrored the subtle shifts of light, and the combination created a serene, almost meditative scene. The servants' quiet attention added to the hypnotic effect, as each flap, each sway, each gentle adjustment reinforced the soft, sleepy rhythm of the royal laundry day. Even small details, the corner of a towel flipping slowly, the edge of a napkin lifting slightly, were noticed and treated with care. No action was hurried, no movement forced. Everything followed the gentle cadence of the morning, a continuous loop of quiet observation, subtle motion, and deliberate care. By the time the servants had made their rounds, smoothing and adjusting while watching the gentle flap of the linens, the room was filled with calm. The soft, rhythmic movements of fabric in the breeze provided a soothing, visual meditation. The royal laundry day continued, measured, peaceful, and unhurried, guiding both workers and anyone listening toward a deep, sleepy sense of tranquility, where even the quietest motion of the simplest fabric could lull the mind into soft relaxation. After the gentle flap of linens in the breeze had settled into a soft rhythm, the servants moved toward the next stage of the royal laundry day, ironing. This task, though ordinary in description, required patience, attention, and an unhurried pace. Each garment, towel, and sheet was handled with careful precision, the iron itself moved slowly, deliberately, to ensure that every fold, crease, and wrinkle was smoothed without haste. The irons were heavy but balanced, worn just enough to press the fabric effectively. A servant would lift a sheet, allowing the iron to glide over the surface in long, slow strokes. Each pass was gentle yet firm, following the weave of the fabric, aligning edges, and smoothing imperfections with meticulous care. Napkins, smaller linens, and delicate silks were treated with extra attention, their surfaces kissed lightly by the warm iron, moved in precise, measured motions. There was a soft, rhythmic hiss as the heated irons met dampened fabric, and the occasional subtle clink as a handle was adjusted or a towel laid flat again. These sounds were calming, forming a quiet cadence that echoed through the room. Every movement was deliberate, every motion slow, reinforcing the hypnotic atmosphere that defined the royal laundry day. The servants' hands were patient and steady, guiding the fabric carefully beneath the iron. Corners were turned with precision, edges aligned with care, and folds smoothed methodically. No garment was rushed. Each linen, whether large or small, light or heavy, received the same consistent, unhurried attention. The repetition of this slow, careful process created a meditative rhythm, a soft, steady tempo that filled the room with calm. Sunlight streamed lazily through the windows, glinting faintly off the polished surfaces of the irons and the freshly pressed fabrics. Silks shimmered gently, cottons gleamed faintly, and the heavier linen settled smoothly on the tables after each careful pass. The air carried the soft, subtle scent of warmed fabrics, mingling with the lingering aroma of soap and clean water. By the time the first round of ironing was complete, the fabrics were impeccably smooth, the rhythm of the room steady and unbroken. The royal laundry day continued, deliberate, patient, and soothing. After the fabrics had been carefully ironed, the next task demanded equal patience, folding each garment, sheet, and napkin with precision, while counting every fold meticulously. The royal laundry room, already quiet and serene, became a space of gentle concentration, where the rhythm of numbers and motions blended seamlessly into the hypnotic flow of the morning. Each fabric was lifted slowly from the ironing table, held lightly in both hands, and folded with deliberate care. 1. Whispered a servant softly as the first fold was made. The second fold followed with the same measured attention, and the counting continued, soft and deliberate, guiding the hands as much as the mind. Even the smallest napkin received the same patient counting, each fold acknowledged and tracked in the gentle cadence of the day. The repetition of numbers created a subtle, calming rhythm. 1, 2, 3, echoed quietly in the room, synchronized with the rustle of linen as it slid smoothly against the wooden table. The motion was slow, methodical, and unhurried, each fold reinforcing the meticulous order and steady pace that defined the royal laundry morning. Servants moved quietly among the tables, occasionally pausing to ensure each fold was precise and each stack perfectly aligned. The fabrics responded gently, smoothing naturally under careful fingers. Even the largest bed sheets were folded in long, deliberate strokes, counted in the same soft, rhythmic manner, as the stacks slowly grew taller and more organized. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the folds and creating subtle shadows that emphasized the neatness of each stack. Silks glimmered faintly, cottons retained their soft matte glow, and every carefully counted fold contributed to the steady visual harmony of the room. The gentle scent of warm fabrics mixed with soap lingered in the air, calming both servants and anyone observing the process. By the time all fabrics had been folded and counted, the royal laundry room radiated calm precision. The act of counting each fold meticulously had transformed a simple chore into a meditative exercise, a quiet, soothing ritual. Every gentle movement, every softly spoken number, reinforced the hypnotic rhythm of the day, inviting both the servants and anyone listening to relax, breathe slowly, and drift further into tranquil, sleepy serenity. The royal laundry continued steadily, measured and unhurried, each counted fold guiding the hands, minds, and senses toward soft, peaceful stillness. With the ironing, folding, and careful counting of folds complete, the royal laundry day moved on to a quieter, more delicate task, pinning fabrics that required special attention. The soft scratch of pins on the wooden boards became the gentle soundtrack of the room, adding another layer to the steady, hypnotic rhythm of work. Each linen, silk, or towel that needed subtle shaping was laid carefully on a padded board. The servant picked up a small pin, holding it between thumb and forefinger, and pressed it gently into the fabric. The soft, almost inaudible scratch of the pin meeting the board filled the air in a quiet, repetitive cadence. Each pin was placed slowly, deliberately, ensuring the fabric stayed in the intended shape, fold, or alignment. The motions were delicate but purposeful. One hand held the fabric steady, smoothing the fibers, while the other pressed the pin just enough to hold it in place. Every movement was gentle, measured, and unhurried. Servants worked in silence, occasionally exchanging a soft murmur about alignment or spacing, but mostly allowing the small, subtle sounds of pins and fabric to dominate the space. Even the smallest adjustments were made with patience. A corner lifted slightly. Another pin would secure it. A fold not perfectly aligned. A soft nudge, a slow adjustment, and the fabric returned to its intended shape. The rhythm of placement, scratch, smooth, and release became hypnotic, repeating steadily across the room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the tiny metallic pins as they were pressed into the boards. They glimmered faintly, a soft sparkle that complemented the muted glow of the pressed and folded fabrics. The air carried the faint warmth of ironed linens and the subtle scent of soap, blending into the gentle ambience of steady, meticulous work. By the time all fabrics had been pinned carefully, the room exuded calm precision. The soft scratch of pins, once almost imperceptible, had become a gentle rhythm guiding every hand and eye in the space. It was a quiet, meditative ritual, transforming a simple task into a source of soothing focus. The royal laundry day continued, each pin placed slowly, every motion deliberate, all contributing to a serene, sleepy atmosphere. The soft, rhythmic scratching and gentle handling of fabric invited both servants and anyone listening into a state of deep, tranquil relaxation, where time moved unhurriedly and every small detail was a whisper of calm. Once the smaller linens, towels, and fabrics had been carefully ironed, folded, counted, and pinned, the servants turned their attention to a larger, more majestic task, the royal curtains. These grand fabrics, heavy with history and finery, required the same meticulous attention, only magnified to match their size and significance. The process, familiar from earlier tasks, was repeated with deliberate, soothing slowness. First, the curtains were removed from their high hooks and carefully brought to the laundry tables. Each piece was draped gently, smoothing folds and edges before the ironing began. The servants moved in pairs, guiding the heavy silk and linen with slow, steady motions. The iron glided methodically across the expansive surface, smoothing wrinkles with long, precise strokes. Each pass was deliberate, measured, and unhurried, creating a soft rhythm that echoed quietly through the room. Once ironed, the curtains were folded carefully, with every crease counted and every corner aligned. The slow, repetitive motions of folding, first one side, then the other, adjusting, smoothing, and counting, brought a meditative calm to the room. The servants worked together, their movements synchronized, the gentle swish of fabric providing a soothing soundtrack to the otherwise silent space. Next came the pinning, a delicate task made more challenging by the scale of the curtains. Each pin was placed slowly, holding folds in position, securing hems, and ensuring that every pleat fell precisely as intended. The soft scratch of pins against the padded boards mingled with the gentle rustle of heavy fabric, reinforcing the hypnotic, meditative rhythm that had carried through the morning. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the vast lengths of fabric. Silks shimmered faintly, linens held their soft, matte glow, and shadows fell gently across each fold. The grandeur of the curtains, combined with the quiet, methodical work of the servants, created a calming, almost mesmerizing atmosphere. Even the largest, heaviest pieces moved gracefully in the hands of the careful, patient workers. By the time all the curtains had been ironed, folded, counted, and pinned, the room exuded order and serenity. The repetitive process, magnified by the size of the royal curtains, emphasized the slow, hypnotic rhythm of the day. After the royal curtains and all other fabrics had been carefully ironed, folded, and pinned, the servants turned their attention to one of the more mesmerizing parts of the day, watching the gentle steam rise from the irons and the warm, freshly pressed linens. The heat caused faint swirls of vapor to lift lazily into the air, twisting softly and disappearing quietly, almost as if the room itself was exhaling in a slow, contented rhythm. The steam was delicate and almost hypnotic. It rose in gentle curls, drifting upward before melting into the sunlight that streamed through the tall windows. Each wisp moved at its own unhurried pace, floating, twisting, and settling in the quiet space above the laundry tables. Servants moved slowly among the fabrics, their hands gliding lightly across warm surfaces, lifting corners or smoothing folds, all while observing the gentle, ephemeral motion of the rising vapor. There was a soft hiss from the irons as they met dampened fabric, and the mingling scent of warm linens and faint soap created a comforting, almost meditative atmosphere. Each swirl of steam carried with it the sense of calm and order, reinforcing the hypnotic rhythm that had carried through the morning. Even the smallest wisp seemed to move in slow harmony with the rhythm of hands and fabrics, a visual whisper of tranquility. Servants paused occasionally to watch longer, letting their eyes follow the meandering paths of the rising steam. Some lingered near silken curtains, observing the way the thin, glimmering vapor caught the sunlight and curved gently before fading. Others focused on smaller fabrics, noting how each warm fold seemed to exhale its own soft breath into the room. The motion was slow, serene, and entirely unhurried. Even the air itself seemed to participate, carrying the soft warmth and gentle scent throughout the room. The combination of rising steam, glimmering sunlight, and quiet, deliberate movements of hands created a serene environment, where time itself seemed to stretch and slow. The gentle, curling vapors reminded the servants, and anyone listening, that every action, no matter how ordinary, could be part of a soothing, meditative rhythm. By the time the last wisp of steam had disappeared, the laundry room was filled with quiet calm. The fabrics were smooth and warm, the air soft and scented, and the servants moved with steady, deliberate grace. The royal laundry day continued, slow and hypnotic, each swirl of steam reinforcing a soft, sleepy tranquility, guiding both workers and listeners deeper into a state of gentle, peaceful relaxation. After the soft spirals of steam had drifted lazily from the irons, the servants turned their attention to a particularly delicate task, inspecting the royal robes. These garments, often embroidered with intricate patterns, adorned with fine threads and embellishments, demanded a slow, gentle touch and a careful, attentive eye. The process was deliberate, calm, and entirely unhurried, in keeping with the tranquil rhythm of the royal laundry day. Each robe was lifted carefully from its designated storage, held lightly in the hands, and examined slowly. Fingers traced the seams, brushing softly over embroidered edges, delicate gold threads, and the folds of flowing silk. Every detail was inspected with patience, ensuring that no crease, stray thread, or small imperfection had escaped notice. The motions were methodical: lift, observe, smooth, adjust, repeat, steady and rhythmic. The room was filled with the quiet rustle of fabrics as each robe was handled. The servants spoke only in soft, deliberate whispers, noting small observations or suggestions for minor adjustments. Their voices blended seamlessly with the gentle hiss of irons and the faint swish of fabrics being repositioned. Even the slightest sound, a soft shuffle of a robe, a careful adjustment of a hem, seemed to fit perfectly within the meditative cadence of the room. Sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, illuminating the fine details of the royal robes. Threads glimmered faintly, beads sparkled subtly, and the pattern seemed to come alive under the gentle light. Each robe, held and observed slowly, became a small meditation, a moment of quiet reflection on beauty, patience, and careful attention. The servants moved slowly, deliberately, ensuring that every fold lay perfectly, every embellishment remained untouched, and every detail received its due attention. Even as they worked, the servants paused occasionally, taking in the soft textures, the faint glimmer of threads, and the subtle scent of clean fabrics. These small, unhurried moments added to the hypnotic rhythm of the day, reinforcing a sense of order, calm, and gentle tranquility. The royal robes, delicate and important, became part of the meditative flow, their inspection a ritual of careful, soothing attention. By the end of the inspection, every robe lay perfectly in place, smooth and immaculate, reflecting the steady, measured work of the servants. The royal laundry day continued, slow, deliberate, and serene, guiding both the workers and anyone listening into a state of quiet, sleepy relaxation, where even the careful inspection of royal garments became a gentle lullaby for the mind. With the royal robes carefully inspected and placed aside, the servants returned to the irons, this time to attend to a subtle but important task, adjusting the iron temperature. The process required a slow, deliberate touch, as different fabrics demanded different levels of warmth, and every change was made with patient care. The irons were lifted carefully, their weight familiar in the hands of experienced servants. One hand adjusted the dial or flame, moving slowly, inch by inch, ensuring that the heat would be just right for the next round of ironing. Too hot and delicate silks might scorch, too cool and heavier linens would not smooth properly. Each adjustment was measured, deliberate, and performed in silence, save for the soft hiss of rising steam as the temperature stabilized. The act of adjusting the iron became a meditative ritual. Fingers moved with intention, twisting knobs, lifting handles, and occasionally brushing away a faint wisp of steam. With the iron warmed to the perfect temperature, the servants returned to the folding and arranging of fabrics, this time paying special attention to the gentle, almost musical sound of linen sliding across the wooden tables. Each sheet, napkin, and towel moved slowly under careful hands, the friction creating a soft, soothing rhythm that filled the quiet laundry room. One servant lifted a freshly ironed sheet, allowing it to glide over the polished surface of the table. The subtle scratch and shuffle as the fabric moved was almost hypnotic, blending with the faint hiss of the iron and the soft rustle of garments in the breeze. Napkins were handled similarly, slid gently across the wood in precise, deliberate motions, the soft sounds repeating in a calming, meditative cadence. The rhythm of the sliding fabrics was slow and unhurried. Each movement was intentional, each fold deliberate. Servants adjusted the corners carefully, ensuring that edges aligned perfectly and that stacks remained neat and orderly. The sounds of linen sliding on wood were accompanied by the faint warmth of the sun filtering through the tall windows, casting soft light over the tables and highlighting the smooth, precise folds of each fabric. Even the largest sheets and heaviest linens were moved with patience. The hands guided the fabrics with steady pressure, lifting slightly when needed, letting them settle with care, and repeating the gentle glide until every fold and edge was perfect. Smaller pieces, such as napkins and handkerchiefs, produced a softer, almost whispering sound as they moved, creating a layered symphony of subtle noises that reinforced the hypnotic rhythm of the royal laundry day. Servants occasionally paused to adjust a corner, lift a fold, or shift a stack, each time letting the fabric slide across the wooden table slowly, deliberately. The repetition was soothing, almost meditative, a quiet ritual in which the motion of fabric became as important as its cleanliness or alignment. By the time the task was complete, the laundry room was filled with the gentle, continuous sound of linens gliding over wood, a soft soundtrack to the slow, unhurried rhythm of the day. The royal laundry continued in its calm, measured pace, each motion, fold, and slide guiding the servants, and anyone listening, deeper into a state of relaxed, sleepy tranquility. The gentle sound of linen sliding on wood, repeated slowly and carefully, became a quiet lullaby, a soothing reminder that even the most ordinary chores, done with patience and care, could create a serene, peaceful calm. After hours of ironing, inspecting, and sliding linens across the wooden tables, the servants turned their attention to a more refined task, folding the royal tablecloths in preparation for afternoon tea. These tablecloths were large, elegant, and heavy, often embroidered with subtle patterns or adorned with delicate lace, requiring patience, care, and a slow, methodical touch. Each tablecloth was lifted gently from its stack, held lightly in both hands, and laid across a clean, polished table. The servants began the folding process with soft, deliberate movements. Corners were aligned carefully, edges smoothed slowly, and each fold counted quietly, one by one. The rustle of the fabric sliding across the table created a soothing rhythm, a calm accompaniment to the soft sunlight filtering through the tall windows. The folds were precise and symmetrical, creating neat, organized rectangles and squares. Larger fabrics required multiple adjustments, lifting and smoothing slowly, then allowing gravity to settle the cloth naturally. Even the smallest tablecloths were treated with the same careful attention, every crease considered, every edge aligned, contributing to a gentle, hypnotic cadence that filled the room. As the servants worked, they occasionally paused to inspect the folds from a distance, adjusting corners and edges with soft, deliberate touches. The soft whisper of fabric against wood, combined with the faint scent of soap and warmth from ironing, created an atmosphere of serene, meditative calm. The tablecloths, carefully folded and aligned, seemed almost to embody the slow, unhurried rhythm of the royal day. Sunlight illuminated the delicate patterns and lacework of each cloth, casting subtle shadows that highlighted the precision of the folds. The repetitive motions, lift, smooth, fold, count, adjust, reinforced a gentle sense of order and patience. Every movement, no matter how small, contributed to the hypnotic flow of the morning and early afternoon, guiding both the servants and anyone listening into a soft, sleepy state of relaxation. By the time all the tablecloths were folded and stacked neatly for afternoon tea, the room was filled with quiet satisfaction. The fabrics lay in perfect order, the rhythmic sounds of folding had slowed to a gentle hush, and the royal laundry continued in its deliberate, measured pace. Each fold, each careful adjustment, each soft glide of cloth across polished wood invited a deep, peaceful calm, a lullaby for the mind, guiding anyone present toward gentle, serene slumber. With the tablecloths carefully folded and stacked, the servants turned their attention to a task that demanded both precision and stillness, creating perfect creases in the finer linens. Napkins, delicate runners, and smaller pieces of fabric all required a slow, attentive hand to ensure that each fold, each line, was flawless. The patience required was quiet but profound, a practice that unfolded gently over time. Each fabric was lifted carefully from its stack and laid flat across a polished wooden table. The servant smoothed it slowly with gentle hands, allowing any subtle wrinkles to settle naturally. Then, with measured movements, they began to create the creases. First one fold, then another, counting quietly in soft whispers. 1, 2, 3, each line was pressed with gentle care, guided by the rhythm of long, unhurried breaths and steady, focused hands. The act of forming creases became a meditative process. Fingers traced the edges, smoothing corners, ensuring symmetry, and allowing the fabric to respond softly to their touch. Even the smallest napkin could take several careful moments, each fold repeated if necessary, until the crease was just right. The repetition, though slow, was comforting, a gentle reminder that patience could transform a simple task into a soothing ritual. Soft sounds accompanied the work, the rustle of fabric, the faint sliding of cloth on polished wood, the occasional soft exhale of a servant as they leaned in to check alignment. These noises blended seamlessly into the serene ambience of the laundry room, adding to the hypnotic rhythm that defined the royal day. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the fine lines of the newly pressed creases, casting soft shadows that accentuated their perfect precision. The patience required extended beyond the hands. The mind followed the slow movements, lingering on each fold, each adjustment, each gentle glide of fabric. The deliberate care created an atmosphere of calm order, where time itself seemed to stretch and slow, and each small motion became part of a larger, meditative flow. By the time all the linens had been carefully creased, the room radiated a quiet sense of accomplishment and tranquility. The fabrics lay smooth, neat, and perfectly aligned, and the servants moved with steady, unhurried grace. The royal laundry continued, measured and serene, each perfect crease guiding both workers and anyone listening deeper into a state of gentle, sleepy calm, where patience and repetition became a lullaby for the mind. After the meticulous creasing of linens, the servants' attention drifted to the silks, those delicate fabrics that seemed to hold light in their very threads. The royal laundry room, filled with the soft sounds of rustling fabrics and gentle footsteps, became a quiet observatory for the play of sunlight on washed silk. Each piece was held carefully, adjusted with slow, deliberate hands, so that the light could reveal the soft shimmer of the fibers. A servant lifted a length of silk and tilted it gently toward the window. Sunlight caught the surface in a warm glow, reflecting softly in subtle waves across the fabric. The motion was minimal but deliberate, enough to see the light dance across the weave without disturbing the delicate threads. Another servant adjusted the angle slightly, observing how the reflection shifted as the silk moved in tiny, controlled folds. The effect was calming, almost hypnotic. The soft glimmer of silk in sunlight seemed to ripple across the room like a quiet, golden river. Fingers traced the smooth fabric with care, feeling the gentle tension and subtle give of each thread. The rustle of silk sliding across polished tables added a delicate, soothing soundtrack, accompanied by the occasional faint hiss of the iron in the background. Even small details were given attention. A slight fold here, a subtle crease there, was adjusted slowly, allowing the fabric to lay flat while maintaining the soft flow of the threads. Servants worked quietly, speaking only in gentle murmurs, their eyes following the shifting light and the soft sheen of the silk. Each observation, each delicate adjustment, reinforced the calm, measured rhythm of the royal laundry day. Sunlight continued to drift lazily across the room, illuminating corners and casting faint shadows along the folds of the silk. The interplay of light and fabric created a quiet visual meditation, where motion was minimal, yet attention and care were absolute. The gentle reflections of the sun on the washed silk seemed to mirror the slow, patient pace of the entire morning, soft, warm, and unhurried. By the time every piece of silk had been observed and adjusted, the room was filled with a sense of gentle serenity. The fabrics shimmered quietly, the sunlight caressed each fold, and the servants moved with slow, deliberate grace. After hours of ironing, folding, adjusting, and observing fabrics, the royal laundry room required one final, deliberate round of tidying. The servants moved slowly through the space, attending to every surface, every table, and every stack of linens with careful, measured attention. This was not a hurried cleaning, rather, it was a quiet, methodical ritual that reinforced the calm rhythm of the day. Tables were cleared of stray pins, scraps of thread, and the faint wisps of steam that had settled during ironing. Polished wooden surfaces were brushed gently with soft cloths, removing dust or tiny particles that might have accumulated. Each motion was slow and precise, the hands gliding over surfaces in smooth, unhurried sweeps. There was a comforting repetition in these gestures: lift, brush, smooth, repeat. The soft scratch of cloth on wood became a gentle, soothing accompaniment to the quiet murmur of the room. The stacks of folded linens were inspected one last time. Napkins, tablecloths, towels, and silks were adjusted slightly if necessary, corners straightened, folds realigned, and creases checked for perfection. Every adjustment was performed with patience, each motion deliberate, reinforcing the sense of order and meticulous care that defined the royal laundry. Even the largest bed sheets or curtains were moved carefully, their weight distributed evenly as they were returned to their proper stacks. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, highlighting the neat, orderly rows of fabrics. Shadows fell gently across the room, accentuating the smooth, even surfaces of the folded linens. The air smelled faintly of soap and warm fabrics, mingling with the soft warmth of the sunlit room. Every sound, every movement, contributed to the hypnotic, meditative rhythm of the space. As the servants worked, there was a quiet sense of satisfaction in the repetitive, unhurried motions. No rush, no urgency, just the soft, steady rhythm of careful hands and attentive minds. The room, once bustling with activity, now felt serene, organized, and calm. By the end of this final tidying, the royal laundry room was immaculate. Every surface gleamed softly, every stack of linens lay perfectly in place, and the gentle atmosphere of order and tranquility filled the space. The royal laundry day continued in its slow, deliberate pace, guiding both the servants and anyone listening toward soft, sleepy relaxation, where even the simple act of tidying became a quiet, soothing lullaby for the mind. With most of the folding, ironing, and tidying complete, the servants turned their attention to the rows of freshly washed sheets still hanging to dry. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting soft shadows that danced gently across the swaying fabrics. The moment called for calm observation, a slow, deliberate walk through the hanging sheets, allowing the senses to take in the quiet rhythm of the room. Each step was measured, careful, and unhurried. The servants moved along the aisles, brushing their fingertips lightly against the edges of the hanging linens. The fabrics responded softly, swaying slightly as if acknowledging the gentle touch. Silks shimmered faintly in the sunlight, cottons whispered against one another, and the heavier linens shifted slowly in the soft, warm draft. Every movement was deliberate, yet so subtle that it almost seemed to belong to the sheets themselves. As they walked, the servants observed details they might have missed earlier. A corner that needed smoothing, a subtle fold that could be aligned, the gentle flare of a napkin caught on a higher line. Each small adjustment was made with patience, fingers gliding over the surfaces with care, ensuring that every fabric hung perfectly. There was no hurry, no urgency, only the quiet, measured pace of attention and care. The room was filled with soft, natural sounds. The gentle swish of fabric brushing together, the faint shuffle of feet on polished wooden floors, and the occasional sigh of air moving through the open windows created a hypnotic, meditative soundtrack. The light played across the fabrics in slow, shifting patterns, reflecting off silks and linens alike, making the entire room feel alive yet tranquil. The slow walk was not just about inspection, it was a practice of mindfulness. Every glance, every touch, every subtle adjustment allowed the servants to immerse themselves fully in the rhythm of their work. Their movements, synchronized with the quiet swaying of the sheets, created a gentle, soothing tempo that carried through the room. By the time the walk was complete, the hanging sheets were perfectly aligned, gently swaying in the breeze, and the servants felt a quiet satisfaction in the careful, unhurried process. The royal laundry day continued at its slow, measured pace, each gentle step and soft rustle of fabric guiding both the workers and anyone listening into a calm, sleepy state of serene tranquility, where even a simple walk among linens could become a lullaby for the mind. After the slow walk among the hanging sheets, the servants turned to another quiet, meticulous task, removing tiny lint particles from the freshly washed and ironed fabrics. This was a delicate job, requiring patience, a careful touch, and an eye trained to notice even the smallest imperfection. The process was slow, deliberate, and utterly calming, adding another gentle layer to the rhythmic flow of the royal laundry day. Each garment was lifted carefully, held lightly in the hands, and inspected under the soft light streaming through the windows. Fingers brushed gently over the surface, feeling for any minute speck that might have escaped earlier attention. Some particles were lifted away with small, precise movements, others were gently blown off, leaving the fabric pristine and perfectly smooth. Each tiny correction was performed with unhurried care, almost as if the act itself were a meditation. The soft rustle of the fabrics, combined with the faint brushing sounds of fingers and cloth, created a soothing background hum. Napkins, tablecloths, and silks were all treated with the same meticulous attention. Even the smallest imperfection warranted careful removal, and each action was repeated slowly, ensuring no detail was overlooked. The servants moved quietly through the room, their motions steady and rhythmic, reinforcing the tranquil atmosphere that had settled over the laundry. Light played across the fabrics, highlighting the sheen of silks and the smooth mat of linens. Shadows shifted gently across each fold as hands moved slowly across the surfaces, lifting and inspecting with patient precision. The repeated motions, lift, brush, smooth, release, became a quiet lullaby, a hypnotic cadence that guided both workers and anyone listening toward a state of calm, sleepy focus. The task was simple, yet its slow, deliberate nature made it deeply satisfying. Each corrected fabric added to the sense of order and completion, reinforcing the quiet, unhurried rhythm of the day. Even the smallest napkin, now free of every speck of lint, contributed to the overall feeling of meticulous tranquility. By the end of this gentle, attentive process, the laundry room was filled with pristine, perfectly cared for fabrics, and a soft, meditative calm settled over the space. The royal laundry day continued at its measured pace, slow, deliberate, and hypnotic, guiding both the servants and anyone listening deeper into a serene, sleepy state, where even the simple act of removing tiny lint particles became a quiet, soothing lullaby for the mind. After the careful removal of lint from the larger fabrics, the servants turned their attention once again to the napkins. These small pieces, though seemingly simple, required meticulous attention to ensure that every fold, crease, and edge was perfectly aligned. The task of double-checking the napkins was slow, quiet, and deeply calming, a subtle yet essential ritual in the royal laundry routine. Each napkin was lifted carefully from its stack and examined under the gentle sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Fingers traced the edges, smoothing corners, and ensuring that the folds maintained their crisp precision. Any tiny imperfection, a slight wrinkle, a misaligned edge, or a faint spot, was corrected with deliberate care. The motions were soft and unhurried, allowing the mind to focus on the gentle rhythm of observation and adjustment. The rustle of fabric sliding across polished wooden tables became a comforting backdrop to the quiet work. Napkins were folded again if necessary, edges realigned, and each one returned to its proper stack. The servants moved slowly from table to table, handling each napkin individually, treating even the smallest piece of fabric with the same patience as a large sheet or curtain. The repetition of these delicate movements created a hypnotic cadence, a gentle rhythm that filled the room with calm and tranquility. Sunlight glinted softly off the finely pressed linens, highlighting the neat lines of folds and the uniformity of the stacks. The subtle fragrance of clean fabrics mingled with the warmth of the sunlit room, adding to the soothing atmosphere. Every motion was precise but relaxed, each action deliberate, allowing the servants, and anyone listening, to become fully immersed in the hypnotic pace of the day. Double-checking the napkins was more than a chore, it was a meditative practice. The repetitive lifting, smoothing, and folding encouraged focus and mindfulness, each careful movement reinforcing the sense of order and serenity in the royal laundry room. Time moved slowly, and the steady rhythm of attentive hands became a quiet lullaby for the senses. By the end of this round of inspection, each napkin lay perfectly aligned and folded, contributing to the overall sense of meticulous calm. The royal laundry day continued at its slow, deliberate pace, measured and soothing, guiding both the servants and anyone listening into a gentle, sleepy tranquility, where even the smallest, most ordinary tasks could lull the mind toward restful calm. With all the ironing, folding, and meticulous inspection complete, the final stage of the royal laundry day began, storing the fabrics carefully in the royal cupboards. This task, though simple in description, demanded deliberate, unhurried motions, as every piece of linen, silk, or cotton had a precise place and needed to be handled with gentle attention. The servants moved slowly, lifting each stack of folded fabrics from the tables. The weight of freshly ironed linens was familiar and comforting in their hands, and every movement was performed with care to avoid jostling the carefully aligned folds. Napkins, tablecloths, towels, and silks were carried one by one toward the tall cupboards lining the walls of the laundry room. Each fabric was placed carefully on its designated shelf. Larger linens were laid flat, smaller items stacked neatly, and delicate silks rested lightly on padded surfaces. Corners were straightened, edges aligned, and folds adjusted with soft, deliberate touches. Even the slightest shift of a stack was corrected immediately, ensuring that every piece of fabric retained its perfect form. The motions were slow and steady, creating a gentle rhythm that filled the room with quiet order. As the fabrics were stored, the soft rustle of cloth sliding across shelves and the faint thump of heavier linen settling into place added a soothing soundtrack. Sunlight streaming through the tall windows illuminated the neatly arranged stacks, casting faint shadows across the polished wood. Each movement, each adjustment, seemed to extend time, emphasizing the calm, hypnotic pace of the royal laundry day. The servants worked silently, their hands guided by both experience and mindfulness. Even when placing the tiniest napkin on a high shelf, they moved with patience, ensuring the crease remained perfect and the fabric smooth. The slow repetition of these movements, the lift, the slide, the adjustment, the placement, created a meditative cadence, encouraging a deep, quiet sense of satisfaction and calm. By the time the last stack of fabrics had been stored, the royal cupboards glowed with orderly perfection. Every linen, towel, tablecloth, and silk lay exactly where it belonged, and the laundry room itself exuded serene tranquility. The royal laundry day had reached a gentle, measured conclusion, each carefully stored fabric contributing to the hypnotic rhythm of the day. The process of storing fabrics, slow and deliberate, offered a quiet, soothing reminder that even the most ordinary tasks, when performed with care, could bring peace and calm. The servants stepped back, admired their work, and allowed themselves to breathe slowly, letting the gentle order of the room guide both mind and body into a state of soft, sleepy relaxation. With the fabrics carefully stored in the royal cupboards, the servants took a moment to pause and breathe, allowing the day to settle slowly around them. Sunlight filtered gently through the tall windows, casting warm, soft beams across the polished floors and neatly arranged linens. The air carried the faint scent of soap and warm fabrics, a reminder of the calm, steady rhythm that had defined the royal laundry day. Every corner of the room reflected quiet order. Tables, once crowded with piles of sheets, napkins, and silks, now stood clear and polished. The hanging sheets swayed gently in the last of the afternoon breeze, their movement slow and unhurried, catching the soft light in delicate folds. Shadows stretched lazily across the floor, elongating as the sun began its slow descent. The servants moved slowly, almost imperceptibly, straightening a corner here, adjusting a stack there. Their motions were measured, quiet, and deliberate, each action reinforcing the calm that permeated the room. There was no urgency, only the gentle, unbroken rhythm of completion, a sense of soft closure as the tasks of the day concluded. The soft hum of distant activity beyond the laundry room faded into quiet stillness. Even the faint hiss of the last iron, now cooling on its stand, contributed to the serene ambience. The room seemed to exhale slowly, and the gentle, diffused sunlight made every surface glow softly, bathing linens, silks, and wooden shelves in warm, golden light. Servants paused near the windows, observing the swaying fabrics and the gentle play of shadows. The reflection of sunlight on the iron silk shimmered faintly, while cottons and linens retained their soft, matte glow. Every detail, every carefully executed fold, and every precise crease seemed to shine in quiet celebration of a day completed with patience and care. As the light softened further, the royal laundry room transformed into a sanctuary of calm. The measured, unhurried tasks of the day had created a rhythm that invited the mind to relax and the body to slow. The gentle swaying of sheets, the polished stacks of linens, and the lingering warmth of the irons combined to form a soft, hypnotic lullaby. A quiet reminder that even ordinary work, performed with care, could bring serenity and peace. The day wound down, slow and gentle, leaving the room and its attendants in a state of tranquil satisfaction. The royal laundry had been completed with meticulous care, each motion, fold, and adjustment contributing to a soothing, sleepy calm, guiding both servants and any listeners into a quiet, restful serenity that whispered softly of sleep. At last, the day came to its gentle close. The royal laundry, once alive with the quiet rustle of fabrics, the soft hiss of irons, and the rhythmic movement of patient hands, now rested in serene order. Every sheet, napkin, towel, and silk had been washed, ironed, folded, and stored, each motion completed with calm precision and measured care. The room itself seemed to breathe slowly, basking in the quiet glow of late afternoon light. The servants moved one final time through the space, their motions deliberate, unhurried, and soft. A hand smoothed a stack of linens, a napkin was adjusted slightly, a curtain was straightened before settling back into place. There was no hurry, no tension, only the steady, rhythmic flow of completion, each tiny gesture reinforcing the serene atmosphere that had enveloped the room since dawn. Windows reflected the fading light of day, the soft beams illuminating the polished surfaces of tables, cupboards, and shelves. Shadows stretched and blended gently with the warm hues of sunlight, creating a calm, muted tapestry over the neatly arranged fabrics. The room glowed quietly, each folded stack and hanging sheet a testament to patient care, order, and careful attention. The soft sounds of the day, rustling fabrics, sliding linens, the occasional gentle footstep, had slowed to almost nothing. Even the air seemed to settle, carrying the subtle warmth and comforting scent of freshly washed fabrics. The rhythm of work had faded into stillness, leaving only a quiet sense of accomplishment and gentle, unhurried calm. The royal laundry day concluded without rush, without urgency, and without the need for hurried motions. Every task, from the smallest napkin to the largest silk curtain, had been performed with mindful care. The servants stepped back, observing the quiet perfection of their work, feeling the subtle satisfaction of a day completed in slow, deliberate harmony. As evening approached, the room seemed to whisper a soft lullaby. The fabrics rested peacefully, the sunlight waned gradually, and the gentle order of the royal laundry lingered in the senses. The day, like the fabrics themselves, had been handled with patience and care, leaving a soothing imprint of calm and tranquility. And so, with the final folds neatly in place, the last curtain hanging perfectly, and the cupboards organized with meticulous precision, the royal laundry day came to a close. Slow, measured, and serene, it ended as it had begun. Without rush, without noise, and with every motion guiding both the servants and anyone listening into a deep, gentle, sleepy calm. The quiet of the room promised rest, the soft rhythm of the day faded into stillness, and the mind could finally drift into gentle, peaceful sleep.